why I call this From Tragedy to Flying. I just thought this is a real South African story and a journey I'm going to take you on, but I want you to see why it's a true South African story. Because it started down the road. I was born in Lenasia, little township down the road in 1976. My parents, I'm happy to say my father's in the audience. Give him a round of applause there, to say it here. And well, when they moved to Lenasia, it was a little township that started from a group of farms and a military base. There were no roads, and I was born at my grandmother's house because they couldn't afford to send me to a hospital. So here we are. I went to the Lenasia Muslim Association. I was a Muslim, so I went to a kindergarten that they ran. And then I went to a school that just turned 30, so the year I turned 6 and I went to school, I was the first year of that school. Can you imagine how successful it was going to be? And I promise you, it's a very successful school today. Most of the kids there, incidentally, are from this area, from Soweto. So 5 years later, my parents had the sense to send me to Sacred Heart College, a Marist Brothers Catholic school that gave me a very good Catholic education, and I became a better Muslim for it. So, and I then went to Wits University, and I became a doctor there. And then I think the most meaningful part of my life started. I worked literally down the road at the Chris Hani Baragwana, and that shaped my way of thinking about people much more than any academic teaching had ever done before. And this is just a picture of the wards for you to look at. Then a few years later, I took a break and I went to the UK, and I worked at this really awesome hospital called the Chelsea in Westminster. And that changed me even further, because it made me say, I don't need to think in terms of resource constraints. I need to think in terms of what's the best I can do for my patients. So everybody asks me this, how do you become a plastic surgeon? Is it a 6-month sort of diploma you do after matric? It's a little bit more involved. Okay, so you become a doctor, it takes 6 years. You do your internship for 2 years, community service for a year. You go into specialize in surgery for 2 years. That's after you do some time in the ICU and some other outside disciplines like orthopedics. And then you do a fellowship in plastic surgery, and you write 3 exams with the College of Medicine, and eventually become a plastic surgeon. So that gives you a license to do what? You can treat hand injuries. We do a lot more than boobs and butts, contrary to popular belief. So we treat injuries. We treat people born with congenital abnormalities, the inability to smile, for example, cleft lips and palates, and all kinds of scars, skin cancers. And yes, of course, there is the exciting part that everybody asks about. So any of the range of things that you see over there. So this journey is what I really came to tell you about. Pippie Kruger's journey. Isabella Pippie Kruger, 4-year-old girl that was burnt so terribly. And where this journey took us, for those of you that were alive in the 80s, where no man has gone before. And so that's her. Before she got burnt, she was at that stage 2.5 years old. And the family were having a braai, 2011 going into 2012, and at this barbecue using some fire lighting gel that they were using on the fire, and the can exploded. She was 3 meters away from her father at the time, so it's not like she was standing next to him. This gel exploded and traveled in the air to her and landed on her and continued to burn. And so severely that it burnt right through her skin, into the muscle, into the fat, onto bone in places. Like literally, we were looking at her ribs eventually. So they embarked on a 4-hour journey down to Johannesburg, phoning hospital after hospital all along the way, through Pretoria, through Johannesburg, and eventually ended up at a hospital in Johannesburg, the Garden City where I work. And I was called at 3 in the morning to say, hey, listen, do you think you can handle this baby? Come in, and and obviously that started us off. And I couldn't do it without these teams. So top left, a fellow plastic surgeon. I had to go to all my senior colleagues and say, damn guys, I have a child that's 80% burnt. So 80% of her body surface area was fully burnt. And we had 20% left, the nappy area. That was all that was left. And my senior colleagues gave me advice, some good advice, some terrible advice, but I had to put it all together. That's a colleague of mine over there that helped me with the eventual surgery. In the middle picture are her parents, Erwin and Annika Kruger, from a little town, Lepalali, in what they call Ellis Ras, out in Limpopo. And on their side, a doctor from South Africa who incidentally oversaw the whole project when he came back. He lives in Europe now, but he came back. And on the bottom left, my anesthetists, the doctors who put her to sleep on 52 occasions. We had to take her to theater 52 times in order to get her stable enough and then cover her. And on the bottom right, my most valuable members of my team, my nursing staff and my therapists, physiotherapists and occupational therapists, never knock therapists. They're amazing. Anyway, so 6 months of operating, something we call slaphectomy or debridement, removing dead tissue from someone. Your body treats dead tissue like a foreign body, and it wants to kill you. So you have to get rid of it as quickly as possible, but you can't go too fast. So sometimes we'd remove all the dead tissue on one foot, and then the anesthetist would say to me, she's too unstable, you have to stop. So we had to come back 2 days later, and stabilizing her medically. All respect goes to this man as well. He's a pediatrician, Dr. Miles Bartlett, that I worked with. We had to learn to forget our egos, because he's a pediatrician, long time in practice. I'm this young newcomer. What does this guy think? He's 30 years younger than I am, you know. And I'm a surgeon, so my ego's already bigger than his. I had to learn. I'm the guy who works with my hands. He's the guy who works with his head. And it's the only way we did this, by working together, swallowing our pride. Lots of counseling and psychology. We had psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, everyone involved. That's Pippie Kruger, the mom. On the first day she came to me, she said, my kid's burnt. I don't know about that little left lip there. I think there's going to be a problem. Do you think she'll be able to wear lip ice? And do you think she'll be able to wear lipstick when she's old enough? And is her toenail going to grow again? I mean, we had to orientate these parents and teach them that we didn't know if their child was going to survive to the next day, let alone wear makeup. So lots of counseling there. Ridwan Kruger, professional hunter. And what was the problem with him? Burnt his hands. His own hands were literally burnt. And at the same time, feeling guilty as hell, because he feels like it was his fault. And we had to teach him, this is an accident. It happens, you know. And then 1-year-old sibling, what happens with him? Is he going to live with the grandparents? And yes, he had to. For the next 8 months, the grandparents took care of him. They had to make special meetings with the parents so he doesn't forget them and doesn't lose the bonding with them. Here's an amazing story about these parents. They came from a conservative Afrikaans background. The mother tells me on the first day, I was waiting for Dr. Mia, so I was expecting a European female to walk in. And here walks this Taliban doctor. How was I supposed to cope with this? And then I had to learn to trust you. And secondly, the only black man I knew was Pitt, who used to operate the tractor down at the bottom of the farm. I've never spoken to him in my life except for call Pitt from time to time for my husband. And now my daughter's favorite nurse is Samson, a Sotho man from Johannesburg, who she can't live without, who comes in when he's not on call to see how his favorite patient is doing. So that's why this story became more and more South African as we went along. So what was our dilemma? 6 months down the line, we needed to cover this patient's wounds. The process of thinking happened. Do we use a dead person's skin? If we had a skin bank with dead person's skin in them, this is you can donate your other organs, you can donate your skin. Not available at that time. We could use pig skin, too expensive, high risk of infection, almost certain risk of rejection. We could mesh the graft, so fenestrate it like a fish net. You could spread it out. Parents didn't want to hear about it. They said, you're not touching the remaining 20% of her body. You're not scarring that. Leave her bum alone. We had to obey. So the next thing was to look at clone skin. You could do it in a spray-on can. Very impractical. It's good for small areas on burns because you're relying on tiny little cells that you spray on. And you have to hope all the skin cells land in the right direction. You can't do it on 80% of someone's body. So we moved to something called cultured keratinocytes, and that's the amazing part. It's part of something we call tissue engineering, a new field in medicine. At the time, nobody thought how groundbreaking we were. We just acted on need. So all of you have heard of stem cells. They're cells in your body that have a pluripotential ability. So they can become any type of cell they want to. I'm part of a schools project, incidentally. And we always tell the little kids, you know, as a surgeon, I see them as stem cells. Because in their lives, they can become whatever they want. They can become clever brain cells or useless fat cells sitting in someone's hip, you know, just over the remote control on the couch there, you know, doing nothing. So they get to choose. And so you need the right environment. You need a good nourishing medium. You need growth factors, just as you have in your body. You need a scaffolding. And what did we use here? We used mouse cells, a scaffolding of mouse cells where we irradiated them to get rid of all the DNA so that none would be incorporated. There's still a small risk, though. And DNA. That's what gene therapy is. You've got to tell the cell what to do. So to grow into sheets of skin cells. That's her leg. Just thought I'd show you that. You know, you could see her mom was painting her nails when they started growing back. So you can see she started healing. Part of her started healing. Befores and afters. After we cloned the skin, covered those areas, you could see the wounds were as thick as leather. I apologize for the graphic nature of this, but it gives you an idea of how horrendous burn wounds can be. So how did we do it? We took 2 biopsies. What you're looking at on the top left is the bottom of her tummy and the top part of her left thigh. 2 pieces of skin, 2 by 6 centimeters, sent it over in an overnight cold chain. The technology is so advanced that you can replicate 2 square centimeters of her skin to 10,000 times its size in 2 weeks. So we had to package it very well in case someone at immigration or customs decided to shake it up to check what was in there. I went to the lab in Boston. So we sent it across to the States, and you're looking at everything through thick glass. Everything is pressurized. You have to enter in a spacesuit. It's literally like being on another planet. If you touch the walls with your gloves, you have to change them. If a fly flies over your specimen and its DNA gets incorporated in the specimen, can you imagine we're going to be putting fly DNA into someone? So the fly is not only a science fiction movie. That's the whole team I'm posing with at the top right there. These large vats at the Genzyme, it's a non-profit laboratory. Amazing company. They can grow your skin for you. They can even grow your cartilage for you. And we're working with them to grow other tissues as well. So you can grow heart valves. It's amazing, but you can. Those vats can hold the specimens, and we're going to be, if you need skin in 10 years' time, you can find them. The little machine on the bottom right is an irradiator. It's got more power than the 2 nuclear bombs that were thrown over Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. They told us that after they locked us in a room with that machine. Incidentally, this lift says no riders. The skin is never able to travel the same path as a human being travels. So they all have their own lifts and their own conveyors. How did we get the skin here? We had 24 hours of viability time after it left the lab. We had to coordinate it, teleconferencing sessions between Europe, South Africa, the United States, and we had it perfectly timed. So we worked on it for weeks and weeks. We did a number of rehearsals. We got the patient into theater. We got the transplant guys to pick it up from the airport, and another miracle. 16 minutes at 5 o'clock in the afternoon from OR Tambo International to Brixton in Johannesburg, the Garden City Hospital. I think that was amazing. So we had her ready. That was us putting her skin on. Came in these specialized containers. This skin is very thin. It's only 5 to 8 cell layers thick. If you look at your hand, that's 500 cell layers thick. So this is very thin. We had to be very careful how we planned this. So lots of planning and drawing before we actually cut. So those are the grafts. You can see it was a really nice experience to be part of. Extremely tense. We used specialized stitches and clips to get the skin on her. That's her. During the week, we had to immobilize her. Took her a week later to theater and took everything off. And, we had to look after her just like we do all other patients who have skin grafts, protecting her from infections, nourishing her with high-protein feeds, giving her lots of physiotherapy. She has to be careful of sun exposure. We have to look after the grafts. She can't be an organ donor. And that's her progress now. A year and a half later, she came to visit me. She comes quite often. She's talking now. She's able to put words together in sentences. She's able to stand, hold on to things. So she's becoming a stronger and stronger and more normal child. This says a lot to those people who told us to leave her alone. It makes a big difference for us in South Africa. What are we going to do with skin culture and other organ culture? It opens the door to amazing things that we South Africans are known for. Burns care, we're going to work more with physicians. We're going to look at a skin bank to make skin more available for large burns victims. We're going to have to learn to teach our kids. We have a school education program where we teach kids, for example, if your clothes catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll. It's quite fun. You can teach kids lots of things. It's a non-profit organization. Pippie's parents have started this, and a year later, we did a similar op on a little girl, Tseliwe Maseko, from Kagiso, and we cloned her skin and covered 35% of her burns. The Smile Foundation, we raise funds from the corporate sector to teach people how to do these specialized ops. So kids who are born with cleft lips and palates, inability to smile, burns abnormalities, and you can see we teach registrars how to do these ops as well. So Smile Foundation doing a lot of good work in South Africa, and I was glad they had the video about the non-profit organizations. Another one of my projects, Project Distinction, we go out to township schools and we give these children hope. We get the business community to put their money where their mouths are, to say, if these kids do well, you're going to give them a bursary for 20 grand next year. You're going to give him 5 grand of spending money so he doesn't have an excuse to not get to university. You're going to give him a laptop and a computer. You're going to give him a 3G card. You're going to give him a cell phone so he can be a good student. And these kids get hope from that. It means someone believes in them. And I think we as South Africans need to learn to take every opportunity we have to fly and drag as many people as we can with us. That's part of it. So national honors, they mentioned the Order of the Baobab. For me, that was amazing. And I'd like to see many more national honors come from where I came from the townships right here in the heart of Soweto and all around us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.